Hey everybody. Today you get to it's Friday, so I've got the center shirt on, and I'm kind of got my camera at this weird angle so that we can see what's going on with the floor and the walls. So sorry, but you get to look at my old man turkey neck today. All right, so here we go. Got our four walls ready to go. You're gonna need your glue. Okay, we're gonna need your clamps. If you've got a bunch of these, this would be helpful. Anything that clamps, got this out of the kitchen. The and if you have a bunch of these, like 3, 6, 8, 10-ish, okay, would be really helpful. Binder clips would work, although these are a little strong, and I'm worried that they'll crush the balsa. So, if you can do that and it doesn't hurt, that's probably good. These things are so strong that it's like, ow. Clothespins are the best if you got a bunch of these hanging around. Otherwise, you'll just have to do a wall, let it dry, then do the next wall, let it dry, so on and so forth. All right. So here's the easiest way to deal with this is I think that it's easiest to let me zoom this up a little. I got my special desk. Ooh, very exciting. All right, cool. So now I can be kind of down here a little bit. All right, so I think that the best thing to do is to get yourself like some little box or in my case, I got a big old coffee mug that's like a big one that you can set this on, and then you can put your little clamps on it, and it doesn't sit on the floor and teeter around. In the classroom, we use a paint can. Okay, now we're going to start putting these up and gluing them down. So you got your floor ready. Your floor has a nice smooth side and a rough side. I'm going to try the smooth side and see how it goes, but the glue might not stick very well to this hardboard. So in the video, if it's not working out very well, I will report that and let you know that you ought to use the rough side. All right, now there's a specific order that we're going to go in, and this is true if you're building a structure in real life. We want to put the by walls in first, then butt the two side walls up against it, and finally end up with the back wall. And because the front wall is in the front and it needs to line up the best, we're going to do that one first. All right, now, very important. I got my thing ready to go. I've got my clamps ready to go. Check to see if your walls are square. So the easiest way to do that is to take a ruler or a scale and check from corner to corner. And you should be pretty close, within 1/8 of an inch. So that is going to a mark, and that is going to, boy, that one's perfect. Okay. If it's not square, you can kind of push it a little bit. Be careful you're not, because see how that can do that a little bit. So you just give it a little bit of, if you push too hard, you're going to break it, but just give it a little bit of wiggling. We do this out in the yard with big old walls. We push them on them a little bit to get them to square, because until the panels are on, they're not perfect. So we're going to check those. The longer ones, the ruler probably won't reach, but you'll have a space that you can kind of eyeball and see exactly how much space there is. Look at that little triangle space that's being made there. And when you go to the other side, it should be the same amount of space. And if it's not, again, make some adjustments. Like on mine, this wall is a little bit bigger from this corner to this corner. So I'm going to give a little bit of a push and try and kind of adjust it just a little bit, just with my fingers, and try and get a little more square. Okay, here we go. We're ready to go. Very important. This piece right here is going to get cut out later. I don't want it there. It's not, we don't want to drive over a bump every time, right? That's going to be open. So don't put glue on the piece that's going to get cut out. We're going to put glue on just here and here. Now there's nails sticking out, right? So before I go through and do this, both on the top and the bottom, I'm just going to go through one more time and and just use my hammer. I'm going to push those nails down just to get them so that they're not sticking up too far. And while I was doing that, I did what some of you are going to do and broke that thing. So I'm going to have to use a little glue in there. Don't tell anybody. Whoops. Let's open the glue clat. That'd be smart. And glue those guys back together. A little trick with that is that if it doesn't work out very well, you can use a little piece of paper in there to kind of hold it all together. So I think I'm going to let that dry a bit, and because it wants to dry all crooked. And then I will pause the video a little bit, let that dry, and come back to it. All right, let that dry for a while. And let's go back to it. So got my lift thing here. Where'd my floor go? There it is. Again, I'm going to try the smooth side, see how that goes. All right, now, again, back to what we were doing. Got my nails, so they're not sticking out too far. A lot of things we're going to do today are going to be by feel. Feel how far those nails are sticking out. Okay, they shouldn't be poking out too much. Now we're going to put a little bit of glue. Got my clamps ready. And I'm going to put a fair amount of glue. Okay, I don't want it squishing out, but I do want to make sure that it's got enough that it's going to hold in between those nails, because the nails heads are going to kind of lift it up a little bit. All right, so now I'm also going to, that little guy needs to keep going out there a little bit. I'll fix that in a minute. I'm going to put this to the front, and I'm feeling with my thumbs right now to make sure that this is flush with the front and the same amount of space on each side. It won't fit perfect. It might be a little shorter. It might be a little bit longer, but we're going to feel whether or not that is sticking out more on one side than the other. Okay, so I feel that it's actually, the wall is just a tiny bit shorter. Oh, look at that thing. Crying out loud. Okay, I'll show how a little trick for that. So it's poking in just a little bit on each side. This thing. Okay, I might have to do the strip of paper trick, which is you cut out a little tiny strip of paper and glue the paper on there, and it works like a piece that's going to adjust it. So I'm going just a little bit in, and this keeps happening because this thing wants to bend over here. Okay, and we're going to clamp it there, and we're going to clamp it over here. Now, if you only have your two clothespins, then we're going to have to let that dry for a while. And if not, then we can continue on. Here's the trick for this broken piece. I've got a little piece of paper right here that's about the same width as that board. And I'm going to put some glue on that piece of paper. And just enough to kind of coat it. And then we'll use this piece of paper as a little gusset to hold that thing together. And paper actually works really, really well as a kind of a repair. In fact, we're going to use paper on the trusses later on to hold those trusses together. And so that little piece of paper is going to do a great job of holding that thing together. It's sticking out a little bit more on one side than I would like. There we go. Okay. So it's a little hard to see that, but hopefully you can kind of, let's see if I can get the camera to focus. Come on, camera, focus on that spot. Oh, well. All right. So another little thing I'm going to do is, because it keeps wanting to bend inward, I'm going to just make a little gusset out of a spare piece right now. and just use that. I'm not gluing it in there. I'm just using it just to kind of hold that thing out for a second, for a little while. There we go. Little side note. So sometimes you'll see walls with horizontal pieces in there like that. And we're not doing that just because we're going to do general structure. But in a house, you'll often have pieces like that in the middle, and it serves two purposes. One is it creates a place to nail drywall to for the seam, because the drywall is 4 feet. And it also creates a fire block. What that means is if a fire happens in the house in the lower part, and oftentimes a fire can start where there is a receptacle or underneath in a basement, and the fire burns through the wall, those flames want to come up through that wall and then up through the top. So this board creates a block that stops the fire from moving from one end of the wall into the other, and it gives more time, for firefighters to put that fire out before it spreads. So that's what fire blocking is. All right, moving on. So I've got this part drying. And again, I'm going to see how well it sticks and let you know if that's working out okay to do the smooth side versus the rough side of this floor. All right, after about 10 minutes, it seems like the glue is doing okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with this. Now, we're going to put the sidewalls on. This is another reason why clothespins work out really well, because I can scoot them in a little bit to make room for the walls that are going to fit onto here. And you got a decision to make. Where do you want your door and where do you want your window? I think what I will do is I will put the door kind of towards the back of the garage. Doesn't matter what side. And I'm going to put the window towards the front. So just because I feel like it, and I had a house once that had a small garage and the door was kind of on the back like that, I'm going to put my door back there, and I'm going to put my window more like towards the front over here. All right. So if you have some extra clothespins or other pins, what we're going to do is glue along the bottom. Okay, except for not where it on the door, you're not going to put glue along here, right? Because we're going to cut this piece out. So be careful of that. And we're going to put some glue along this edge of the board where they're going to go together. And we're going to clamp all that together at the same time. Now, it's important, again, that we do this in this order, because this wall is going to butt up against this one, and we want it to be nice and snug. So I'm going to do a little bead of glue where it's going to meet up against this board on the inside. Little bit. Don't have to be crazy with it. And I'm going to do some glue on the bottom. Again, I'm going to make sure I don't glue where the door is going to be cut out, where the base is. Okay. All right. I think we're ready to go with that. And again, I'm being really careful that I'm centered on that coffee cup that I'm using right now as my base. Okay. And I'm using my fingers to feel. I'm kind of pushing a little bit up against that thing. And again, if you've got more of these guys, you can do it all at the same time. If you don't, you'll have to let that side glue dry for, 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so, and then come back and do this. So I'm going to clamp that guy down. Now this wall's leaning out a little bit. You can kind of see it up here, but that's okay, because we're going to clamp those walls together up there. Now again, if you only have the two clothespins, then you can do this and let it dry, and it's okay to let it dry kind of sticking out from each other like that, as long as you didn't glue it. If you did glue it, maybe wipe the glue off. Again, if you only have the two clamps. If you have more little things, let's try that. Try this this guy and see if it crushes. And put the corner on there. Ooh, it's really crushing it. Yeah, so that didn't work out so well. Clothespins, although it looks like it's doing okay. So I got 3 along that side. You can also set it down and put something kind of heavier on it. That will work out sometimes. Or if I thought I had more clothespins. And I'm going to put some up here. Ooh, it just barely makes it. Boy, they're wanting to move apart from each other. And even the little clothespins that you have may not stretch out quite enough, in which case you might just have to hold that guy together for a little bit. It's okay. You can text with one hand and hold the things with another hand, right? In fact, that's what I think I'm going to do. Is the tacky glue works really well for this, because the tacky glue will kind of hold everything together. And it doesn't take very long for it to set, so you can hold it for a little bit, and then it will it'll stick together. This blue glue doesn't work so well for that, but it's doing okay. All right, so just kind of keeping an eye on it, making sure it's sticking together, and then we'll worry about the other one. And on this one, there's a bead all the way down because nothing's getting cut out of the window wall. And then again, it'll get a bead of glue that connects with the front. And as I did before, I'm feeling to make sure that I'm flush with the edge of the floor on the outside. And we're looking pretty good. All right, so I just let that dry for a little bit. Took the little clothespins off, so it's looking pretty good. Ready to put the back wall on. Same process. Now this one, depending on how you built it, like mine is sticking out just a little bit. It might be sticking in just a little bit, but that's why we did the front wall first, because the front wall is more important to be all lined up pretty than the back wall is. So again, we're going to do this by feel, put on some clamps, and get it all together. And there we go. Now I got some different clothespins here that are a little bigger. Yours might not quite fit on there, which again, you can just hold them together for a little while they're drying. Make sure that your corners are all nice and lined up. And we're done with the walls. So just like a house, it's pretty exciting when that happens. And what's funny is when walls go up on a house, everybody gets all excited. It's actually the easiest and least time-consuming part about construction, but it's the most fun. So cool. So next we're going to talk about top plates, and then finally we'll talk about the trusses. All right, so here's how the double top plate works. You've got a spot up here where there's kind of a weak point where these two walls come together where it can pull apart, because in real building, we have nails holding them together, but nails are not designed to clamp things together, right? So the double top plate helps lock this together by doing an overlap. Okay, if you look at your instructions, it talks about how those pieces are overlapped at the corners. Okay, now we might have a problem though, because at least for some of you, we'll see what happens, but some of you probably have in your bundle of longer boards, your boards are not quite long enough to reach from the very end of the wall to the very other end of the wall. If yours are long enough, cool, then you can go ahead and do that, because they need to overlap. So it needs to go all the way from the beginning to end so that it overlaps those little corners. If you don't have pieces that are long enough, here's what we can do. You probably have some studs left over. And if you have at least 6 of them, we can use those for the sides. Or if you don't, you can use some of your longer pieces and cut them. But what we can't have is right now, if we look at this, we've got a little bit, we put those 2 studs on there, and I still only have like a little tiny gap right here. That is not enough, right? If this was a real building, we couldn't cut a piece of board this big and expect it to hold things together. There needs to be some length and some meat to it, right? So here's what I would like you to do if you're going to use studs, is to take 4 of them and cut about, in fact, let's go ahead and cut exactly 1.5 inches off of those. Made a mark at 1.5 inches. Go ahead and cut those, as always, trying to make sure it's nice and straight and even and square. Now, these pieces that I'm cutting off are not going to be long enough to be used anywhere else, but you should have enough that we can afford that little bit of waste, because so far we've had very, very little waste, and can afford to lose those 4 little pieces. If you didn't have 4 studs to be able to do that with, we'll talk about how to do that in just a moment. Here's what we're going to do with those 4 pieces. Okay, we're going to take 2 on each side. I'm going to put a good bead of glue. Again, I didn't open my glue bottle. I haven't had enough coffee. Okay, and we're going to do that on all 4 of them, and it's going to go all the way to one end. Okay. Now, we could do this in actual life, because the main thing is to lock those corners together. This doesn't serve as anything strength this way. It's just mainly to hold the corners together. It also doesn't really provide a lot of strength downward. It's just, again, helping to tie the walls together. These studs are super strong up and down. Even the balsa, you've probably noticed, is pretty strong. I'm not saying you should do this, but if you were to cover this with like paper to keep it from swaying one way or another, you could probably stand on it. Okay, so we're going to take the other one, butt it up against there. Again, if you're finding, like I'm finding, there's not enough adhesion there, because that glue has to be able to hold that down, and those little nails on the top are keeping it from sticking. Okay, we're going to butt them together. So I've got it lined up and I've got them butted together. Okay. And now I'm going to cut another piece out of my long ones, or if you have enough studs, you could cut them out of your studs, to cut a piece that's going to go right here. So if I have enough studs left over, which I do, or other pieces that would work, you're going to cut that remaining piece. Now, this makes sure that there's not a ton of like little short pieces in there. They're all long enough that they'll have some stability. So I'm going to take that. I'm actually going to use this as I'm holding it together to start. There, I've got my little cut made that I can cut that out of. So I'm going to cut my piece and install it right here. We'll do the same thing on both sides. We're going to let that dry a little bit. I found one of my boards was trying to bend upwards a little bit, so I used those clothespins to kind of hold it back down. So you might want to keep an eye on it while it's drying to make sure that the boards aren't moving around on you, because they do have a tendency to do that. All right. So we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to come back and we're going to put the other final pieces on. And finally, for the top plate, you're going to take 2 longer pieces and cut them so that they fit in between the other top plates. Get a pencil and make yourself a little mark right there. You can measure it, or you can just use what already exists. Cut those, install them, and we're done putting up the walls and ready for the trusses. All right. I hope you ended up with a nice sturdy structure. And next step is the last step. All right. Have fun. See you next time.